Hello, welcome back for another episode of Built to Win. We got a great topic today and we're super excited to join us. If this is your first time visiting us, Built to Win is a podcast about sales, marketing, and faith, and building a life that matters. And today we've got I don't want to say a boring topic, but a topic that people and business owners really do not like to address. And it's the 5 numbers each home service business owner should know. So we're going to get into some accounting stuff today, and we are not an accountant, so these were numbers when we first started that were very important to us. So we've got 5 numbers you should know, and then hang with us until the very end because we've got some bonus metrics that we'll share with you too that are important. So excited for you to join us today, and let's get started. Today I've got the pleasure of joining my business partner of over 30 years, Brent Killen. Welcome, Brent, to the show.
Yeah, it's good to be here again, Jonathan.
You always come with a ball of energy, right?
I sure do.
All right, well, let's get started. We'll jump into some fun stuff. And for those of you that are listening, we've got a banger of an episode that releases tomorrow. Rick Harding, I want you to check that out. Rick was fantastic, and he was a great guest. And I'm excited for you guys to hear that show. But let's jump into the 5 numbers every home service business owner should know. And I'm going to take the first one because it's something I'm pretty passionate about. And it really is, do you have enough leads? Do you have enough people to give quotes to, right? And how do you go out and get leads? And we talk about being omnipresent. We talk about, are you doing the cold calling? Are you doing your posting? Are you part of a networking group? Are you, like I said, are you prospecting? Are you part of the Chamber of Commerce? Are you doing a nurture campaign? You know, you've got to have people to talk to. If you don't have anyone to talk to, you're not going to have any estimates to quote, right? So your numbers are irrelevant. So you got to first start off with, are you doing SEO? Are you putting blogs on your website? Do you have an updated website? Do you have a business development rep, right? So pretty common sense. Obviously, people joining the show, if you're in sales or you're a business owner, you've got to have leads. And from there, what do you need to know? And it's pretty common sense. And number 2 is you got to know your close rate, Brent. So why don't you talk a little bit about what a close rate is for the people that are relatively new to business, and if you've been in business a long time, hang in there with us because we're going to get kind of deep onto, the close rate and what that means for your business and if you improve that. So in a common sense, or a basic formula, Brent, why don't you talk a little bit about close rate?
Yeah, I think I want to add a little bit to number 1. What we've experienced with a lot of clients or prospects is the reliance on one channel for leads, right? And I think we see this a lot with successful home service businesses who have a good solid network of people to send them leads, and they rely solely on referrals, right? And then those referral sources dry up and the phone stops ringing and they have no digital presence whatsoever. We've seen that repeatedly. So Jonathan mentioned omnipresent. You really have to focus on all those channels that Jonathan talked about, the digital marketing, the networking, the referrals, social media, right, email marketing, everything you possibly can do to generate enough opportunities to scale your business. But do not rely on one source because eventually it's going to dry up.
Yeah, and just to add to that, and I didn't mean to jump ahead. I get excited because I want to cover these 5 things, but to step back, like to your point on number 1, do you have enough leads? I can think of 2 customers that have come to us in the last 6 months that said, I have to do something because I used to just rely on referrals. One was a client that he sponsored some hockey and baseball for the local community, his kids. He was a coach, and he got out of coaching, and then they just dried up, and he's like, I'm just not going to make it if we don't get this fixed. And it's a pretty great success story. And then another one was, we're in the landscaping, tree service business. We're in the home service business from a marketing standpoint, but kind of the same thing. You could rely on just, inside sales, how many trees do you want cut down? And that just is not the case anymore. So we've seen the paradigm shift. And for reference, it's the middle of 2026 now, and the days of old school business of just waiting for the phone to ring are over, and there's just no question about that. So you do have to be on every channel, and people do ask us quite a bit, where should we be? And we've talked about it in some previous episodes, and we're like, you need to be wherever your clients are, and that's everywhere, right? And I talked about, I think in the last episodes, like we're even exploring being on Pinterest, because a lot of people go and look for landscaping ideas on Pinterest and design things like that. So yeah, that's a great point. Anything else to add to, are you generating enough opportunities?
Yeah, I think the only other thing that I would add there is, again, just don't rely on the one source, and make sure you're everywhere. Let's jump into number 2. John touched on it earlier, but how many of your opportunities that are created actually become customers? And that ties into close rate. It ties into the discovery process and speed to lead. How quickly are you getting in front of people? And we've talked about a lot of those things in previous episodes, number 3 and number 4, if you want to check those out. But really, this metric is pretty simple. Is if you get 20 leads and of those you provide 10 quotes, and of those 10 quotes you close 3 deals, right? Your close rate is 30%, but of the opportunities of 3 of 20, you're at 15%. And John and I are big believers in working the numbers backwards. You have to identify how much revenue you want from a business standpoint, and then work those numbers backwards. And if it's required that you have 50 or 60 leads a month, you have to figure out a way to invest to make that happen, right? If you continue doing what you're doing, and 3 new deals enough is not enough to grow your business, you need to do something else to get more opportunities, right? Or you have to get better at sales and close more opportunities, right? So there's a lot of things that go into that, but you have to know those numbers so you can work them backwards to help your business grow.
Yeah, and I think it's a great segue into, and again, we talked about this in past podcasts, but you mentioned discovery call, and when you set that first meeting, and this podcast is certainly not about the sales process, but there are things that you can do to increase your close rate, and that's really having a discovery meeting. And you can go back and listen to the previous podcasts that we have on it, but no one is doing any pre-call preparation, right? So if you set the appointment and you go out to give an estimate, and you can spend 5-6 minutes looking at that person's background on Facebook or Instagram and trying to make a connection there, that'll improve your close rate dramatically. So, all right, should we move on to number 3?
Let's do it.
All right, number 3, and again, for those of you that don't know us, Brent is the data master of the company, and I'm the sales guy. So I could always read a comp plan, but you get into the super accounting EBITDA stuff, we need to bring in some help. But one of the things that we like to track here is in number 3 is our average job value. If your average job, and you're a contractor, and I just had a call last week with a client of ours, and we wanted to work, as you mentioned, Brent, work the numbers backwards, right? So what's your average job value? And it ranges, if you are a bathroom remodeler, right, they can range anywhere from $10,000 to $60,000, right? So after you've done 10, 20, 30 jobs, that you can go back and look at your average job, and your average job could be $40,000. It's a good number to have, because then when and I don't want to jump ahead because you can handle the profit piece, but if you know your average job value, you can say, hey, my average job is $40,000, and then in step 2, if you know your close rate, how many, if you want to get to $1 million in revenue, that you've got to close $83,000 a month in business to get to that $1 million marker in revenue, right? And then the most important thing is are you profitable? But anything to add to the close rate on that? I think one thing that has come up before is we've seen if close rates get too high, pricing tends to be a little bit low, I think most of our home service business owners are in that 40%, 35 to 40% close ratio. They get a little, they start closing 5, 6, 7, and we like to see that, but then we start questioning the margins. You know, are you making enough money to pay the loan on your skid steer and payroll and things like that? So
Yeah, for sure. I think
average job value is nice to know. Go ahead.
I think the big thing with the revenue, the other thing you can tie that back to is, is all of your marketing efforts leading to that ideal customer, right? So if you're looking for a landscaping opportunities and your average job size is $7,000, but you want it to be $30,000, you either need to network with new people, find different referral partners, change your marketing efforts so you can get into those larger opportunities. Because if you keep doing all those same things, you're just going to keep getting $7,000 deals and you're never going to grow. So I think that's a key point there, that you have the ability to adjust that average job value by, changing up your marketing or your outreach strategy.
And one of the things I can tell you that we've struggled with is not, well, we haven't struggled with defining your avatar or your ICP, but sometimes we'll maybe take on a client that isn't necessarily a super great exact fit for us. And it's a little bit less revenue because we want to help them out and get them on the right track. But I think you've mentioned this before, it's like you almost have to draw the line in the sand. It's like, hey, if they don't fit our minimum, do you guys have minimums? I can't, if you can't roll a truck and bring a skid steer and drive across town and make a profit, you don't want to be driving 30 miles, especially with the cost of diesel and fuel today, right? So you got to be careful. It's like, can you take that job on if it falls below a certain revenue threshold?
For sure, yeah, and I think if you're, the one thing to look at, if the opportunities in your funnel is big enough and you've got enough deals there, it's easier to say no to a client that isn't the perfect fit for you. We just had a client yesterday tell us that he got a couple of leads that came in, but he actually told them no because it was too far away to drive for the revenue opportunity. And you have to make those decisions, but fortunately he has enough in his funnel that he's able to do that. And if you don't have the opportunities, you end up chasing those things and driving all over town, making minuscule margins in revenue, and never really truly growing. So you have to have the opportunities, and that's why we led with that today.
Yeah, that's great. Let's move on to number 4, and that is, it's almost the most important thing. It's like, are you making money? And sometimes as business owners, we're chasing a revenue number, right? We want to get to $1 million, or we want to get to $500,000, or you want to get to $3 million, right? And at the end of the day, it's like, hey, I got money in the checkbook. And a lot of our clients, they're in that home service industry, and they're owner operators. They're out in the field a lot, and so they're chasing this revenue number. At the end of the day, it's like, oh my gosh. Well, and I'll tell you, and I can't name names, but you're right. I had a call this week, and they're like, we do a job. I get $30,000 in, and this is a prospect. I'm sorry. We get a job in, and we collect $30,000, and then I turn around and pay my insurance, I pay my skid steer payment, and I pay my truck payment, and I got no money left. So it's like you're chasing your tail between your legs. So you really have got to know the your profit number. I don't know, Brent, are there any warning signs? Do you handle that on the front end when you're quoting it out? Obviously, you want to make sure
you have to know. I mean, and this ties into a deeper conversation around truly knowing your business numbers.
Yeah.
You have to know exactly what everything costs, from labor to truck cost to, material cost. You have to know those things going in, and then make sure that you're quoting things appropriately, right? Because you can get upside down, especially in the landscape world. If you don't pay attention and know the numbers going in, you may have a $100,000 job that you tie up a crew or two for 3 or 4 weeks and not make any money. Well, that month is gone and never coming back, right? And depending on where you are seasonality wise, you lose that month in the northern states, you're never going to get that time back or that revenue back. So you have to know your numbers across the board going in, so you don't make those mistakes, and you know that you're going to make a good profit on every single opportunity.
Fantastic. Well, let's wrap up with number 5, and then we've got some bonus metrics for you too that we use in the marketing world to prove out if we're making our clients money. And so number 5 is lifetime value of a client, right? So if you know your numbers 1 through 4, specifically your average job value and what you make, the lifetime value of a client is, are they going to come back, right? So if you are a landscaping business owner and you know a client, they typically come back for a mulch refresh, right? Or if you own an electrical company and they've got a project and they're going to do an outdoor wet bar and a pool, they've got a lot of electrical and you've already done it. So, working with our existing base, we like to focus that, when you bring a new client on, that's just the start of a relationship. And there's many things that you can do to stay in touch with those. We like to have a nurture campaign. So like any existing customers, you can send out a newsletter every month just to keep in front of them. And boy, if you remember, real estate agents made this famous back in the day, right? We were always getting, I remember growing up, my mom had a friend that was in real estate, and like clockwork, once a quarter we'd get a magnet, and then the beginning of the year we'd get a calendar with their name on it. So those trinkets are always good too. I know we live in a digital world, but that promotional specialties business is still thriving out there in the great US of A. So there's a lot of things that you can do, but you really want to stay on top of mind when you get a customer, because customers are hard to get, and we'll talk about CAC, or customer acquisition costs, in our bonus metrics that we're going to share with you in a second. But anything to add to the lifetime value, Brent?
I think the one thing that, I'll add there is, we have these conversations often. We just had one again with another prospect yesterday, and, the question came up, what are you doing for database reactivation, right? So you have this list of, 100 or potentially thousands of customers, and you have not communicated with them whatsoever, right? And I look at the landscaping business itself, yes, they do a big project, $50,000, $70,000, but they're also probably paying somebody to do a spring and fall cleanup, right? And, early in the spring when you're not doing the big projects yet, or late in the fall when things are kind of winding down, those are great opportunities to get back in front of the customer. And then every time you get back in front of the customer, they may think of another project for you to do, right? So it's not just about the spring and fall cleanup. They may say, you know what, we've been thinking about doing a patio here, or a pergola there, or a sauna here, or whatever that might be, right? But it's just another opportunity to get in front of them. So don't look at spring and fall cleanup as a waste of time and effort. It's a time, seasonality wise, that it's a good opportunity to earn extra business, and then you will get additional jobs off it. It might even be just a referral to a neighbor because you went out and did such a great job on the fall cleanup. So
it gives you another chance to throw the sign in the yard, and the neighbors are like, hey, who did that project for you? It looks great.
exactly, yep.
Well, and we all know the painter in my old neighborhood, that he was the master of that. And I'll give a shout out to him. It was top tier painting in Woodbury, and he did a great job of that. And he ended up painting like the whole neighborhood because he was putting the signs out. And then what he did, and I think it's genius, Brent, because we love the sales aspect, is he would drop a sign in the yard. And he painted my house before I moved up to where I'm at now. He went and knocked on the 10 doors in the neighborhood saying, hey, I'm painting Jonathan's house. Do you need any work done? And the business that he picked up, I mean, that's a gold nugget right there. The business he picked up by doing that and prospecting, the 5, 6, 7, 8 neighbors in the neighborhood was an absolute gold mine for him. So, all right. Well, we'll wrap this up shortly here. I'm going to share my screen here. We've got 3 other metrics that we like to talk about. And I don't want to say they didn't make the top 5, because the top 5 are kind of basic. And you want to have a great understanding of those numbers moving forward. But let me share my screen here. All right, hopefully everyone can see that. I can make that a little bit larger if need be. All right, So these are 3 other metrics, and it's a quick reference cheat sheet. We can include this down in the link below. Cost per lead, and you'll hear that CPL or CAC is customer acquisition cost, and marketing ROI. I'll cover the first one. It's real basic. We don't need to get into this, but what is my marketing cost? And it's really your cost per lead is your marketing spend divided by your total leads. What does it cost? What is your cost per lead? And it's your marketing spend. And in that, don't forget, in that, if you have a sales rep, you can include those costs in there, right? So you can track their funnel if you've got any sales reps working for you. And you just want to know what is the cost per lead. And that'll help your marketing company out or your marketing person out and define that number. And you want to know that number. Brent, you want to handle 2, and then I'll wrap up with number 3?
Yeah, number 2 is the customer acquisition cost. And basically what that is how much does it cost to get each customer, right? Jonathan talked about the lead, right, as a cost per lead, but then you break down the numbers on marketing plus sales cost divided by new customers. And that's the cost per customer. And you need to know those numbers and actually have that as a goal or a predetermined number that you're willing to spend to acquire a customer. And then all of your marketing efforts need to tie into that. So that's customer acquisition cost. Fairly simple, straightforward, but a very, very important metric, and it's important that you know what that is going in to a new marketing relationship, so you know what you're going to spend and adjust accordingly based on how the numbers flow.
Yeah, and to wrap up here real quickly is the last one is your marketing ROI, and it's your total revenue minus your marketing cost, and that is a divided by sign. I know it looks like a plus sign, but it is a divided by a sign. Marketing cost times that by 100. And is my marketing making me money? And when Brent and I, we had an exit. We owned a company beforehand. We sold that, and we've been building this company for about 3.5 years. And we did interview, I don't know, say 10, 12, 15 people when we were looking at starting this company. And we asked these business owners before we started the company, it's like, is your marketing making any money? And I don't think, Brent, we got anyone to say yes. I think everyone was basically, they're like, I don't know. We don't know. And we talk about it now because we laugh because, what they were telling us is their marketing company. I'm not picking on any marketing companies, but they were talking about vanity metrics. It's like we have a call once a month. We go through these vanity metrics, and they talk about impressions and all that fun stuff. And don't get me wrong, impressions and clicks on the website, all that stuff's important. But at the end of the day, your marketing agency or your marketing team really should try to define, is it making you money? And I know a lot of people out there this is gonna be a hot button, and they're gonna say, well, marketing's intangible, because invariably, you know what they say, they're like, how did you find us? Well, I found you on the internet. Well, you know what? You could be doing some advertising with Social Indoor. You could be doing some advertising on the radio. You could be doing you're doing your SEO. You're doing your blogs. You maybe have a podcast out there. So it's that whole collective effort, and we talk about omnipresence that Brent brought up earlier. But you really want to know if your marketing is making you money. So, all right. With that, I want to close, and I've got it here in front of me. I'm going to read it to you so I don't butcher it. But we like to close every episode. Well, let me step back, Brent. Do you have anything to add to those metrics that we talked about?
No, I think we covered that well. Let's jump to the end here.
All right. Well, as I mentioned earlier in the opening, our podcast is about sales, faith, and marketing, not necessarily in that order. And faith is an important part of JBX and who we are as a team, and it's our culture at JBX. And one of the things I want to talk about is Luke 14:28, and it basically says, suppose one of you wants to build a tower, won't you first sit down and estimate the cost to see if you have enough money to complete it? And I'll read that one more time. So it's Luke 14:28. This is the NIV version. Suppose one of you wants to build a tower, won't you first sit down and estimate the cost to see if you have enough money to complete it? And what that's talking about is basically stewardship, right? Are you going to start a project and not really know if you're going to have enough money to complete the project. You know, it's the same thing with starting a business. And if there's any advice that Brett and I can give you after starting multiple businesses and running this one, and it's just common sense, it's like when you're putting your budget together, we have a tendency to overinflate how much revenue we can bring on in that first year or two and underestimate the amount of cost or expenses. So just a good rule of thumb, if you guys are out there and you're working on your budget and you're going to start a company, a home service company, put a budget together or an expense column and double it. Whatever you think it's going to be, just multiply it and you'll have a safety net. And then whatever you think your revenue is going to be, divide it by 2. Because invariably your revenue is just not, unless you get lucky and things go strong, but you'd rather be safe than sorry. Don't get overly optimistic on your numbers when you're starting out because you don't have a history. And again, double your costs, what you think they're going to be, and cut your revenue in half. And I think you'll be happy there. So with that, thanks for joining another episode of Build to Win. We're grateful for you. If you enjoyed this and you got some content out of it and you liked it, don't be afraid to hit that like and subscribe button below, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for joining, and we'll see you next time.